My mom whispered, "Meredith's more their speed," as she sat me with the toddlers. But when my plane touched down and the staff welcomed me as the CEO, every glass at the main table stopped midair. You know that feeling when your own family, the people who are supposed to lift you up, systematically tear you down year after year? Well, for decades, I was their personal punching bag. The comfortable daughter, dismissed and overlooked. But what they didn't know is that their latest humiliation, banishing me to the children's table at my father's 75th birthday, wasn't just a slight. It was the final spark igniting a quiet, powerful comeuppance I'd been meticulously planning for years. The crisp autumn air of Vermont hit me as I stepped out of my modest Volvo, carrying the scent of pine needles and whispers of approaching winter. Lakeview Resort, a bastion of old money and towering expectations, reflected the golden hour sunlight across Lake Champlain. My simple black dress felt like armor, a shield against the familiar judgment I knew was waiting inside. I smoothed non-existent wrinkles, a habit ingrained from a childhood under my mother's critical gaze, always finding fault. It was 6:45 p.m., 15 minutes early, exactly as planned. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across wood-paneled walls. The murmur of wealthy voices, like a subtle hum of privilege, drifted from the main ballroom. Dad's 75th birthday celebration was in full swing. "Meredith, darling." Mother's voice, sharp and perfectly modulated, cut through the chatter. Elizabeth Hale glided towards me in a champagne-colored gown that probably cost more than my car. Her embrace was stiff, practiced, the kind reserved for country club acquaintances, never her own. "Daughter, you made it." The familiar scent of Chanel No. 5 threatened to choke me. "Of course, Mother. I wouldn't miss Dad's birthday." Her eyes swept over my dress, cataloging every perceived flaw. Well, you look comfortable." She looped her arm through mine, steering me away from the main reception area. "Come with me, sweetheart. We need to discuss seating arrangements." My stomach tightened. After 38 years, I knew that tone. The ballroom stretched before us in cream and gold splendor. Round tables draped in crisp white linens dotted the space like small, isolated islands of privilege. But Mother guided me past the elegant place settings, past the crystal stemware catching light like diamonds, past the arrangements of white roses and silver candelabras. We stopped at a smaller table near the back wall. Cartoon napkins featuring smiling animals were arranged in cheerful triangles. Plastic cups in primary colors stood ready for juice. The children's table. Mother patted my arm, her smile tight. "We thought you'd be more comfortable here. You know how the conversation gets at these events. All business talk and stock portfolios. This way you won't have to pretend to keep up." Ice spread through my chest, chilling me to the bone. Through a gap between tables, I could see the main dining area where my siblings would sit. Wesley, discussing his latest legal victories. Clark, boasting about real estate developments. Tara, holding court about her boutique success. My fingers tightened around my clutch purse, its smooth leather a familiar anchor. Just 3 years ago at Christmas, I'd given them each carefully selected tech stocks that had since tripled in value. Wesley had smirked. "Some of us make real money, not computer pennies." They'd all laughed, just as they always did at my cute attempts to play in their world. "The children will love having you here," Mother continued, oblivious to the storm gathering inside. "Me? You've always been so good with them." "More their speed, really." I remembered our family's agonizing tradition of ranking yearly achievements at holiday gatherings. I always ended up last. My work in medical technology dismissed as playing with computers. The constant, grating reminders that I simply wasn't measuring up to the Hale family standard of success. My silence stretched a beat too long. Mother's perfectly penciled eyebrows drew together. "Darling, you understand, don't you? We're just trying to make everyone comfortable." I looked from the cheerful, childish decorations of my assigned table to the gleaming crystal and fine china of the adults' table. The divide couldn't have been clearer if they'd drawn a line on the floor. Of course, I said quietly, my voice betraying nothing. I set my clutch on the table beside. A napkin featuring a grinning giraffe. I understand perfectly. My young nieces and nephews burst through the ballroom doors then, their excited chatter filling the space. They spotted me and waved enthusiastically. I waved back, managing a genuine smile. They at least had always been happy to see me. I checked my watch again. 7 p.m. Everything right on schedule. Mother patted my shoulder one last time before drifting away to greet more prestigious guests, leaving me in her wake. I settled into my chair at the children's table, smoothing my dress once more. The familiar ache of exclusion sat heavy in my chest, but underneath it, something else was building. Something that felt like patience, like purpose, like power. My phone buzzed in my clutch. A text from my executive assistant. *jet standing by. Board members confirmed for 9 p.m. I tucked the phone away, allowing myself a small, private smile. They'd made their choice about where I belonged. Soon, they'd learn about mine. Champagne glasses clinked at the main table, drawing my attention from helping my young nephew. Tommy cut his chicken fingers. Wesley stood, his crystal flute catching the warm light. The same self-satisfied smirk he'd worn since law school stretched across his face. A toast, he announced, to another banner year for the Hale family. My siblings preened at their mahogany throne of a table while I sat surrounded by cartoon napkins and juice boxes. Clark adjusted his Italian silk tie. Before rising, the Arlington Heights development cleared its final hurdle last month. 14 million in pure profit. He paused for the appreciative murmurs. Though I suppose that's just another day at the office for us Hales. I dabbed Tommy's chin as he struggled with his ketchup. A dollop had already stained his dress shirt. There you go, buddy, small bites, remember? Wesley cleared his throat again. And speaking of victories, my firm just won the Westbrook case. 6.5 million in damages. He smirked in my direction, a deliberate dig. Some of us choose ambition while others prefer comfort. My mother's tinkling laugh carried across the room. Meredith has always been different that way. I focused on helping Sophie, my niece, arrange her carrots into a smiley face while Tara launched into a breathless recitation of her boutique's feature in Vermont Style magazine. The familiar knot formed in my stomach, the same one I'd carried through decades of family gatherings. My father, William, rose, commanding attention with his imposing height. Success runs in our blood. His gaze swept past me without a pause. Well, most of our blood. Uncomfortable laughter rippled through the extended family. I kept my expression neutral as Clark leaned over to Wesley, his words carrying despite his attempt at discretion. Remember when we convinced Dad to let us use her college fund for our first ventures? She never seemed to need it for anything important anyway. My crystal stemware trembled slightly in my hand. My college fund. I set it down, focusing on Tommy's struggle with his fork. Here, let me show you an easier way to hold it, I said softly, my voice calm despite the tremor of old wounds. A shadow fell across our table. The resort manager approached, his manner notably different from his earlier dismissive greeting. Miss Hale. He cleared his throat. Regarding your special arrangements. Everything is proceeding as planned, I replied evenly. Thank you for checking. He nodded with newfound deference and retreated. A young server, passing with water refills, paused near my chair. My brother works for your company, she whispered. He says you're amazing. I gave her a small, genuine smile as she hurried away. At the main table, Wesley was holding court about his latest court victory while Mother beamed. The familiar tableau of family hierarchy played out exactly as it had for decades. Until it didn't. A resort staff member in a crisp uniform stepped onto the patio, tablet in hand. Excuse me, is there a Meredith Hale here? We need confirmation for private airspace clearance before your jet arrives. The clinking of crystals ceased. Silence descended like a heavy curtain. Clark's laugh Sharp and dismissive, cut through the quiet. Must be a different Meredith Hale. I raised my hand slightly. That's me. Thank you for checking. My voice remained steady, though my heart thundered against my ribs. Please tell them to proceed according to schedule. The staff member nodded and departed, leaving behind a vacuum of disbelief. Wesley's champagne glass froze halfway to his lips. Mother's fingers clutched her pearls. Tommy tugged at my sleeve. Aunt Meredith, can we see your airplane? I smiled at him, ignoring the intense stares from the main table. Maybe next time, sweetheart? Right now, let's finish your dinner. The weight of unasked questions hung in the air like storm clouds. But for the first time in decades of family gatherings, I wasn't the one feeling small. Let them wonder. Let them stew in their assumptions and dismissals. The truth would reveal itself soon enough, and I didn't need to say a word. The jet's arrival would speak volumes more than I ever could. Meredith, Mother called, her voice strained. Darling, what's this about a private jet? I helped Tommy spear another piece of chicken. Just some business arrangements, Mother. Nothing important. Enough for the main table's discussion, I'm sure. The crystal glasses clinked with considerably less enthusiasm as my siblings exchanged glances. Their carefully constructed narrative was developing hairline cracks, and we all knew it. I checked my watch. 20 minutes until touchdown. Sometimes the sweetest revenge wasn't in what you said, but in what you let others discover for themselves. Wesley's polished loafers clicked against the marble floor as he approached the children's table. His lips curled in that familiar smirk I'd seen at every family gathering since childhood. The resort's crystal chandeliers cast shadows across his face, deepening the condescension in his expression. Playing pretend with the private jet talk? He placed his hands on the back of my chair. That's adorable, Mary. Some things never change, do they? From the corner of my eye, I caught Tara's theatrical headshake as she leaned toward our cousin Anne. She's always lived in a fantasy world, she stage whispered, loud enough to carry. Remember when she thought she could become a doctor? My mother materialized beside me, her fingers digging into my shoulder. Please, don't embarrass us, dear, she hissed through her perfect smile. Not at your father's birthday. I opened my mouth to respond when my phone lit up with a cascade of notifications. The blue glow illuminated the childish placement card with my name written in Comic Sans. My lips curved into a slight smile as I read the message from my VP of Operations. The children around me continued building their napkin towers, blissfully unaware of the tension hovering over their table like storm clouds. My nephew Tommy knocked over his water glass, and I steadied it before it could spill. Sometimes reality is better than fantasy, I said quietly, sitting straighter in my chair, looking directly at Wesley. The first distant rumble of jet engines cut through the murmur of conversation. I checked my watch. Right on schedule. The sound grew louder, and heads began to turn toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the resort's private airstrip. Conversations stuttered to a halt as the sleek aircraft descended, its polished fuselage catching the late afternoon sun. The distinctive Halomet Systems logo, a stylized DNA helix intertwined with a medical cross, stood out clearly against the white paint. Father squinted through his bifocals. That looks like one of those medical technology companies, he said, frowning. The ones in the news lately. It is. I took a sip of water, my gaze still fixed on the jet. Mine, actually. The silence that followed felt like a physical presence in the room, heavy and absolute. Wesley's face had lost several shades of color, while Tara's mouth hung open in a most unladylike manner. Mother's hand had frozen on my shoulder, her perfectly manicured nails digging crescents into my skin. Through the windows, I watched my executive team disembark, Marcus in his characteristic navy suit, Sarah's red hair bright against the evening sky, Robert carrying the acquisition paperwork in his leather briefcase. They moved with practiced efficiency, their purposeful strides a stark contrast to the idle wealthy scattered around the resort's dining room. The resort staff parted like a well-choreographed dance troupe, creating a path from the airstrip to the main entrance. The respect in their posture was unmistakable. They'd been briefed on exactly who was arriving. James Chin, my head of legal, entered first. His dark suit was impeccable, his presence commanding. As he made his way directly to my table, "President Hale," he said, his voice carrying in the hushed room. "The board is waiting. The $1.2 billion deal is ready. We just need your signature." At that exact moment, the resort's bar televisions flashed with breaking news banners. The closed captioning told the story in stark white text. HaloMed finalizes $1.2 billion acquisition of Regional Hospital Network, CEO Meredith Hale to lead integration. Wesley's champagne glass slipped from his fingers, shattering against the marble floor with a startling crack. Mother clutched at her pearls, the string nearly breaking under her grip. Father's face had gone from ruddy celebration to ashen shock in the space of a heartbeat. I stood from the children's table with measured movements, smoothing my simple black dress. Tommy tugged at my sleeve, his young face full of curiosity. "Sometimes grown-ups don't see what's right in front of them," I told him softly, ruffling his hair. The words carried no bitterness, just quiet acknowledgement of a truth I'd long since accepted. My team waited by the door, their presence a reminder of everything I'd built while my family was busy dismissing me. I walked toward them, each step measured and calm, the click of my heels against the marble matching the steady rhythm of my heart. At the threshold, I paused and turned back to the stunned faces of my family. The same faces that had smiled condescendingly at my cute little computer job for over a decade. The same people who'd relegated me to the children's table at every gathering, assuming my silence meant acceptance rather than strategy. A smile touched my lips, not vindictive, just quietly knowing. "Enjoy the rest of Dad's birthday," I said, my voice carrying in the silence. "I have a hospital network to acquire." The door closed behind me with a soft click, leaving only the echo of shattered assumptions in my wake. Minutes later, the jet steps felt solid beneath my feet as I climbed aboard, the familiar contours of the cabin greeting me like an old friend. Such a contrast to the overwrought crystal chandeliers and gilt-framed mirrors of the resort. Here, clean lines and understated luxury spoke of purpose rather than pretense. My executive team settled into their seats with practiced efficiency. Sarah, my CFO, spread documents across the polished table while Marcus pulled up digital presentations on his tablet. The casual confidence of people who belonged exactly where they were. "The Vermont acquisition documents are ready for your review, Miss Hale," Sarah said, sliding a leather portfolio toward me. "We've highlighted the key provisions." Through the jet's window, I caught glimpses of my family's increasingly frantic movements on their phones. Wesley's face had gone from smug to sallow as he punched numbers into his cell, no doubt calling every business contact in his directory about HaloMed. Clark made a dash toward the jet, his expensive loafers slipping slightly on the tarmac, but security smoothly intercepted him. "I'm sorry, sir," the guard said, his tone professional but firm. Miss Hale's instructions were quite clear. The scene unfolding below took on a surreal quality, like watching a silent film through glass. Tara's voice carried across the distance, pitched deliberately loud enough to reach the gathered resort guests. "We always knew she would succeed. It's what we always said, isn't it, Mother?" The other guests' reactions were subtle but unmistakable. Raised eyebrows, sideways glances, the slight shuffling away that signaled polite disbelief. A resort staff member, the same one who'd served us earlier, leaned in to whisper something to her colleague, and I could read the words on her lips. They made her sit at the children's table. Father stepped forward, his usual commanding presence diminished as he attempted damage control. "Just a family joke that went a bit far," he announced to no one in particular. "You know how these things can get out of hand." But the tide had already turned. My team handled the growing media presence with the same quiet competence they brought to everything. James, my head of communications, stood at the edge of the assembled press, his voice carrying clearly. Miss Hale. Built HaloMed from the ground up over 11 years, he stated, as photographers snapped images of the journey displayed on his tablet. From a small startup to the industry leader in cardiac monitoring systems. The photos told their own story, me in our first office, surrounded by prototype designs, the team celebrating our first major contract, the opening of our research facility. Each image a silent rebuke to my family's dismissive narrative. I watched as resort guests began gravitating toward my nieces and nephews, their curiosity evident in their eager expressions. "What's your aunt really like?" I heard one woman ask Tommy, my sister's oldest. "She seems remarkable." Tommy's face lit up. "Aunt Meredith is awesome. She helped me build my science fair project last year. We won first place." The shift in social dynamics was fascinating to observe. Elizabeth's carefully cultivated country club friends began drifting away from her orbit, their body language speaking volumes. The same women who had laughed at her jokes minutes ago now found urgent reasons to be elsewhere. Clark's phone buzzed again. I could see him flinching as he answered it. One of his real estate investors, no doubt. The man's face had taken on the gray pallor of someone watching their carefully constructed world crumble. "You didn't recognize a billion-dollar CEO in your own family?" The investor's voice carried clearly in the evening air. "Do you have any idea how this makes us look?" Wesley's legal colleagues were already texting him. I could see him scrolling frantically through messages, his reputation for keen judgment suddenly in question. Tara's fashion contacts, who had ignored her calls for months, were suddenly flooding her phone with requests for introductions. I settled into my seat as the jet's engines hummed to life. Sarah handed me a pen, and I began reviewing the acquisition documents with careful attention. The same attention to detail that had built HaloMed while my family was busy dismissing my little computer project. "Is there anything else you need, Miss Hale?" Marcus asked. I glanced out the window one final time. The sun was setting over the resort, casting long shadows across the gathered crowd. My family stood, frozen in those shadows, watching as their carefully constructed hierarchy crumbled around them. "No," I said quietly. "I think everything is exactly where it needs to be." The jet began its taxi down the runway, leaving behind the resort and its inhabitants. But I knew the real impact of this evening was just beginning to unfold. Sometimes the most effective revenge isn't in what you do. It's in simply revealing what you've already done. A week later, I stared at my phone as the texts rolled in one after another, like waves trying to erode my resolve. Wesley's message sat at the top, a masterwork of legal precision without actually accepting responsibility. While certain misunderstandings may have occurred regarding past family interactions, I want to express my deepest regret for any perceived slights. My thumb hovered over the delete button. 3 more messages popped up. Elizabeth, claiming her motherly protection, was behind her actions all these years, as if relegating me to children's tables and dismissing my capabilities was some twisted form of love. "Family should stick together," read my father's text. "We can work this out, princess." Princess? He hadn't called me that since I was 7. Through my office window, Manhattan stretched out before me, buildings catching the morning light. My executive assistant knocked and entered, tablet in hand. "The hospital network acquisition documents are ready for your signature," she said, "and your brother's law firm called again. They're very interested in representing HaloMed in future ventures." I allowed myself a small smile. Declined with thanks. The board meeting room felt different today. 11 years ago, I started HaloMed in my garage apartment with my grandmother's inheritance and a vision everyone else called impossible. Now I sat at the head of a gleaming mahogany table, watching my team present the final details of our $1.20 billion acquisition. My phone buzzed again, a family friend this time. "Your mother is devastated by this misunderstanding, Meredith. Think of what this could do to the family's reputation." I turned the phone face down as my CFO began his presentation. The numbers told a different story then. My family's narrative, thousands of jobs created, breakthrough medical technologies saving lives. Daily, awards and recognition I never mentioned at family gatherings. Miss Hale. My attorney slid the final contract across the table. Once you sign, the integration can begin. The pen felt heavy in my hand, not with doubt, but with the weight of purpose. Each stroke of my signature represented a choice made long ago when I decided to build something meaningful instead of chasing my family's approval. A week later, I stood at the entrance to Lakeview Resort, watching as the old sign came down. The new one read, "This property is now owned by Eastland Partners." Below it, a smaller plaque caught the morning sun. No event seating will be arranged based on perceived personal success. My phone rang. Clark this time. His real estate proposal sat unopened in my email, just like Wesley's firm's pitch. The call went to voicemail. Inside the resort, staff members were already implementing the new policies. The old hierarchy of table assignments was gone, replaced by a system that treated every guest with equal consideration. I ran my hand along the polished wood of the reception desk. The same desk where, just weeks ago, I was directed to the children's table at my father's birthday party. "The remodeling plans are ready for your review," the resort manager said, handing me a folder, and "We've had several inquiries about the new ownership structure." "Let them wonder," I replied, thinking of the countless times I sat at lesser tables, watching my siblings bask in preferential treatment. Sometimes the best response is simply doing better. My assistant appeared with a tablet, displaying the latest press coverage. HaloMed's Community Impact Initiative is making headlines, she announced, not just for the lives we're saving, but for the way we're transforming healthcare. Access in underserved areas. The same family that dismissed my computer pennies now watched us. Their social circle celebrated my company's achievements. A text from my mother, *, "We should talk about the resort, dear. Perhaps over lunch." *, I thought of all the lunches where I sat quietly, absorbing their judgment, their casual cruelty masked as concern, the annual rankings of achievements that always placed me last. The Christmas parties where my gifts were treated as jokes, while Wesley's law firm bonuses earned standing ovations. No response needed. In my office later that evening, I reviewed the week's reports. The hospital network integration was exceeding expectations. Our new cardiac monitoring system was saving lives in ways my family never bothered to understand. The resort's bookings had increased under the new inclusive policies. Success tastes different when you've built it on your own terms. My niece sent a video message. She'd been accepted to MIT's engineering program. "Aunt Meredith, you showed me it was possible," she said, her smile bright and genuine. "Thank you for seeing me." This, I thought, is the real victory. Not the property acquisition that stunned my family, not the billions in market value, but the chance to ensure another young woman won't have to prove her worth at the children's table. The sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of possibility. My phone stayed silent now. They'd finally realized I won't be manipulated back into their hierarchy. The daughter they underestimated has become the woman who transformed their social playground into a testament to equal treatment. I opened my grandmother's journal, the one who left me the seed money that started everything. Her words still rang true. Success isn't about who notices you, it's about what you notice needs changing. The resort's new sign glowed in the evening light, visible from my office window. No more separate tables, no more arbitrary rankings, no more proving worth through wealth or status. Sometimes the quietest revenge is simply building something better than what hurt you. And they'll have to live with that reality every time they drive past that sign. 6 months have passed since that night at the resort, and I stand at my office window overlooking Central Park, watching the late autumn sunlight paint the trees in shades of gold. The view still takes my breath away, not because of its grandeur, but because of what it represents: freedom, purpose, a life entirely my own. My reflection in the glass catches my eye. The woman staring back at me stands straighter than she used to, her shoulders relaxed rather than braced for impact. My customary low bun has loosened slightly during the day, a few strands framing my face. I touch Grandma's platinum watch on my wrist, its familiar weight grounding me. Behind me, my desk holds the standard executive suite decor, sleek laptop, carefully organized. Papers, a single orchid blooming in elegant defiance of the winter approaching outside. But it's the photos that tell the real story. My executive team at our last product launch, faces bright with shared triumph. Sarah from engineering holding up our latest patent approval, the IT department's ridiculous holiday party photo where we all wore lab coats decorated with tinsel. And there, in a simple silver frame, my nieces and nephews at the lake last weekend, their faces full of joy as they helped me plant tulip bulbs for spring. No other family photos grace these walls. Some absences speak louder than presents. My intercom buzzes. Miss Hale? The first guests are arriving at the resort. Thank you, Claire. I gather my coat and bag, each movement measured and calm. Have the car brought around. The drive to Vermont passes in a blur of colored leaves and clear sky. I've made this journey countless times, but never quite like this. The resort appears through the trees, its elegant facade unchanged yet somehow transformed, perhaps because I see it through different eyes now. Or perhaps because the sign at the entrance now reads, Eastland Partners, a HaloMed property. The circular table dominates the main dining room, replacing the hierarchy of separate seating that marked so many painful gatherings. White roses and silver candles create an atmosphere of understated elegance. No children's table in sight. Wesley arrives first, of course. His lawyer's instinct for positioning himself advantageously hasn't changed. Meredith. He hovers uncertainly by the entrance, his usual swagger dimmed. This is quite something you've done with the place. Thank you. I gesture to the table. Please, sit anywhere you'd like. His eyes dart around, searching for the best strategic position, before realizing there isn't one. Every seat holds equal weight in a circle. He settles eventually, tugging at his collar. The others filter in gradually. Clark, subdued without his usual audience of investors. Tara, wearing a dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Mother and father arm in arm as always. Various aunts, uncles, cousins. And finally, my favorite people, the kids, running ahead of their parents with uninhibited enthusiasm. Aunt Meredith. Emma launches herself at me, all gangly limbs and pure affection. Did you see the new playground? It's amazing. I did. I squeeze her tight, breathing in the scent of apple shampoo and childhood. What's your favorite part? The rocket ship climber? It looks just like the ones in your company video. I catch Sarah's eye across the room. It had been her idea to design the playground equipment based on our medical imaging machines, making science feel magical rather than intimidating. She grins and gives me a subtle thumbs up. The evening unfolds with a different energy than our previous gatherings. No one dominates the conversation. No achievements are ranked or measured against each other. When my phone buzzes with news about HaloMed's latest cancer treatment breakthrough, I silence it without checking. Some things matter more than business. Later, I find myself in an unexpected moment with one of the resort's newer employees, a young woman named Jessica, who reminds me painfully of myself at that age. She's restocking the bread basket with trembling hands, shooting nervous glances at my family members. They said I shouldn't bother applying to medical school. She whispers when I catch her eye that I should stick to something simpler. Let me tell you something about success. I keep my voice low, just for her. It isn't what they think it is. It's not about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. Her spine straightens almost imperceptibly. Really? Really? I pull out one of my business cards, writing my private email on the back. Send me your application when it's ready. I know some people on admissions boards who value potential over pedigree. The light in her eyes reminds me why I do this, why I choose connection over isolation, impact over revenge. Some victories don't need applause to matter. When the prestigious Thompson Medical Innovation Awards ceremony calls later that week, I decline their invitation without regret. Instead, I spend that evening walking the pediatric ward of our newest hospital acquisition, watching our monitoring systems track tiny heartbeats with perfect precision. A small boy waves from his bed, his smile bright despite the tubes and wires surrounding him. "Are you a doctor?" he asks. "No," I perch carefully on the edge of his bed. "I just help make the machines that help the doctors." "Help you?" "Cool." His eyes widen. "Can you make them less beepy?" "They wake me up sometimes." I laugh, making a mental note to talk to engineering about sound reduction options. I'll see what I can do. My reflection catches in the window as I stand to leave. The same face that used to seek validation and family approval now finds its purpose in moments like these. Success doesn't always wear the face we expect it to. The sun sets over the resort's lake as I complete my final task of the day. The dock creaks softly under my feet, water lapping against the shore in gentle rhythm. Everything glows in shades of amber and rose, the sky putting on its own quiet show of success. I don't need their applause anymore. Don't need their approval or understanding. The water reflects my smile back at me, peaceful and genuine. Some victories speak for themselves, in the language of lives changed and horizons broadened. In the end, that's the only validation that matters. Besides, I think as I turn back toward the resort, the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's living so completely right that their opinions become irrelevant. And that's exactly what I intend to keep doing.